Chapter 3, Jumping the Broom. Omar Tanner never had much growing up. He graduated high school in 1958 and got a job in the bookkeeping department of a button factory in the garment district of New York. Working there, watching how clothes were made, gave him a lifelong appreciation for design and fashion. His supervisor at the factory was an Italian immigrant named Milo. Milo saw the changes that were happening in the country at the time and believed that all Americans would be helped if African Americans weren't left behind. Milo watched how quickly Omar's mind worked, how swiftly he did sums in his head. His capacity for remembering even the tiniest details. He encouraged Omar to go to night school to earn his associate's degree. Omar listened to Milo's advice and kept going. It took him a decade and a half of going to school part-time, but he continued on to his BA and then to law school. Omar worked in the button factory until the day he passed the bar exam in 1975. As a gift for his triumph, Milo gave Omar his first custom-made suit. It was a 14-gauge, mid-gray worsted wool suit with a silk-lined jacket and vest. That suit was sharp. Omar was top of his class in law school, clerked for an appellate judge, and upon graduation, had his choice of big national law firms. Omar, however, had only one destination in mind: Cravath, Swaine, and Moore. Cravath, Swaine, and Moore had a special place in the hearts of civil rights-minded black law students. Cravath lawyers wrote the U.S. Supreme Court brief on behalf of the Congress of Racial Equality, crafting language that would change the laws of segregation. Those lawyers, all white, most of them older, and the furthest things from activists, became powerful allies to the freedom riders of the civil rights movement. It was the same firm that President John F. Kennedy had turned to for help when creating the Lawyers' Committee for Civil Rights under law. While many lawyers went right into a specialty, Omar and his class of young lawyers trained in the Cravath method, rotating through each department for 6-month stints so they would gain a solid footing in all the firm had to offer, from family law and intellectual property to mergers and acquisitions. Omar never lost the quiet humility of the boy who spent most of his 20s working in a button factory. He gained a reputation for being unpretentious, honest, and loyal. CEOs trusted him, and in the 1980s, when conglomerates were built and antitrust cases exploded, he was often called upon for his Solomon-like ability to make sure all sides felt they had been heard and were respected. He was 34 when he graduated law school, more than a decade older than most of his peers. For the next 5 years, he lived the happy life of a bachelor. He spent his summers on the vineyard, where he cultivated a circle of black men of means who cared about uplifting the race. Together, they golfed and sailed, planned fundraisers for major political candidates, and mentored young black men. During the winter, he traveled to Vail with his colleagues from the firm. The company owned several houses for entertaining. He learned to ski and, to his surprise, loved it almost as much as he did swimming and sailing. As an eligible black man, he was constantly set up on dates, but he cared little for being matched with a black woman of the right pedigree. The idea that so many of the black elite clung to, that of our kind of people, made him shudder. What did that mean? Even when his net worth crossed into the millions, he didn't think of himself as our kind of people. He was Omar Tanner from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, who had worked in a button factory and caught a few lucky breaks. He was so careful and measured in most parts of his life. But the thing he told no one was this: he had no interest in being part of a power couple, the new term that was being bandied about in the 1980s. He wanted to fall head over heels in love. He decided he wouldn't settle down until he met a woman who stopped his heart at first glance. He had worked hard. He had done the right thing by his mother, his sister, his colleagues, and his race. He would allow himself this one indulgence. He would wait for a woman to knock him off his feet. The first time Omar saw Amelia Vaux, she was tooling down Pease's Point Way in Edgerton, Massachusetts, with a white girl in a red convertible. He just stepped out of the old Wailing Church, where Gloria Naylor had read a short story that would become a chapter of her landmark book, The Women of Brewster Place. He'd been thinking about how the women in the novel reminded him of his mother and sister. He loved the vineyard because it was a counter-narrative to the things he read about Black people in books and saw on the screen. Diane Carroll had as much glamour as Princess Grace, but in the movies, she still dated sanitation workers and wore sensible shoes. He had decided to walk over to the Right Fork Diner. It was late afternoon, and he could enjoy a fried fish sandwich while watching the planes take off from the private airstrip nearby. He was walking back to his car when she whizzed by him, the very opposite of the armies of long-suffering Black women in brick cities. She seemed carefree, but more than that, buoyant, as if nothing and no one could keep her down. Her hair was flying, and the way she smiled, he thought, I want to be the one who makes her smile like that. I want to spend my life with a woman capable of such joy. His life was steady, peaceful, and he liked it that way. But he knew in that instant he would turn his whole world upside down to be with her. All the things he had worked so hard to earn and achieve seemed like fake treasures compared to the luminosity of that golden woman. The next summer, Omar returned to the vineyard with one purpose and one purpose only: to find her, the beautiful Black woman in the red convertible. As luck would have it, she was back too. He found out from the most reliable gossips on the Bluffs that there was a pretty Black woman staying with an old moneyed white vineyard family on the other side of the island in West Tisbury. Determined to meet this mystery woman, he borrowed his friend's car and drove right up to their front door. When Libby answered, he was soft-spoken and direct. I'm Omar Tanner, and I'd like to meet your friends. They were married the following summer in 1982 in Libby's backyard. They shared sweet wedding vows, a ring, and a kiss. Then, to honor the tradition of their ancestors, Omar and Amelia held hands and jumped over a broom with colorful cloth wrapped around its stick. The party was small, just Omar's mother, sister, and a handful of his friends. Just Amelia's grandmother from New Orleans and her cousin Rogine, who served as her maid of honor. Libby and Blythe from the boarding house were her bridesmaids. When the photo of the bridal party ran in the Vineyard Gazette, the whole of Oak Bluffs buzzed over the Black woman with the all-white bridal party. Rogine was light-skinned Black, but you couldn't tell from the black and white pictures. In the decades that followed, people would hold Amelia and Omar up as the ultimate Oak Bluffs couple. They were beautiful, wealthy, and powerful. It seemed they wanted for nothing except children, an emptiness that was eventually filled by their 3 goddaughters. But nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors in a marriage. Nobody ever really knew all that Omar and Amelia had faced. One thing was for sure. God had blessed Omar more than he could have imagined that August day when he and Amelia had jumped the broom. He would come to see that Amelia was more than a wife. She was a warrior.